Okay, so this week we're switching gears a bit and we're going to take this website that we've been working on with HTML and CSS. Mine looks different than yours for sure. And we're going to be converting it to a website built with a new tool, which is more of a WYSIWYG editor called Webflow. So let's talk a little bit first about Webflow and what it is. So I've got my Webflow dashboard open here, but let's just look at their marketing website first. What is Webflow? So it claims to be the modern way to build for the web. It empowers designers to build professional custom websites in a completely visual canvas. So you could say Webflow is a no-code tool for building websites. And we're going to be using it to rebuild our code-based website. Now, one question you want to ask yourself is, when would I choose code to build a website versus when would I choose something like a WYSIWYG tool like Webflow? Well, in my experience, usually most larger websites, so websites for a business, for an online magazine, things for your church maybe, or something like that, those kind of websites are usually best built with a tool that has built-in content management. And there are lots of these kind of tools, including Webflow, but there's something that the content can be managed by multiple people on a team. You could build those kind of websites with just code, straight up HTML and CSS, but then you as the coder would be on the hook for every time they want to make an update. And it also gets kind of tedious to make an update for certain types of things. Say you had a section called announcements or events or something like that. Having to add new HTML every time just becomes untenable. And so using a tool that has a built-in CMS, has robust content management, and is easy for anybody to use, regardless of if they know code, is pretty important for that scenario. So that's probably the main reason, really, that you would choose a no-code tool. The other reason might be that you just don't really like code, or you don't feel comfortable enough with code to try to do it all manually. For like small personal websites, like a splash page, kind of like the one we built already, then code can be great for that. It gives you the ultimate amount of control, but also that's kind of the downside of it, is you have complete control. And so you can make it look really bad or really good. It's completely up to you. With tools like Webflow and some of the other tools we'll explore later, it's easier to make a nice site, a little bit harder to make a really nice site. So those are just kind of the trade-offs. But I think for this video, though, it'll just be a practical example of us trying to convert this site that we did with HTML and CSS to a Webflow site. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put this window up over here so we can look at it. And then I'm going to have my Webflow site over here. Now, I've already signed up for Webflow. Once you sign up, it'll go through this onboarding process for you, where you go through a tutorial where you're editing this little page right here. So this was the initial project that they start up with, but I can create a new project here. And I'm going to do a blank site. So make sure you start with blank, not a template. And let's call this markjohnson.me. You can call that whatever you are calling your code base project. And it'll just start you up here with a blank canvas. So there are a lot of things in Webflow, and there's a lot of great resources for it. I'm not really going to go into depth about everything in Webflow. There's just so much stuff. But we're going to focus on rebuilding this page, and then I'll explain things as we go. So first of all, let's just get some content in there. So one of the things we did, if you remember in our code, was we made a container that centers our content. In our case, that was the main tag. And one thing that's really important to understand about Webflow is that almost all the buttons and concepts in it map directly to what the code is under the hood. So if you know code and you can think of it like that, you're going to have a much better time of this. If you think of this as like Photoshop or Illustrator or InDesign, you're going to have a very bad time of it, because that is not what it is. It actually is making code for a website, which has kind of its own unique constraints. So first of all, we'll just start off with duplicating this main container, a centered container that's 800 pixels wide. So how would you do that in Webflow? Let's go this little plus button, and look at that. They have something called container right here. Let's drag that down. And look, it's already centered. Cool. So that's what we want. I'm not really sure how wide this is. Let's go ahead and it says container width is locked to keep it responsive. Edit max width to change the container size. So we want to look at the max width. And we'll set that to 800 pixels. Just like if you look at our code over here, let me blow this up a bit. the max width, and move down here, is 800 pixels. So now we've got the same kind of container set up here. Okay, so let's set the background color next. How did we set the background color? Let's take a look. Oh, we've got these variables here. So here's our BG color. Not necessarily going to use variables on the Webflow side. I mean, although maybe we could, I don't know. I'm not sure if Webflow supports that. But if we select the body tag, so I clicked out here, you can see that I've got that selected. I can set under backgrounds in this panel, I can set that to a color. Which can I just paste that in? Yep, I can. So there we go. Very good. And we also need to set the color, the foreground color. And I'll just grab that from here. And it looks like that's set right here under typography. So you've got font, weight, size, color. Set that as that. So there's our foreground color. And let's see what else. I mean, that's pretty good for starters. Let's actually start putting some content in there. So let's do the headline first, the hi, I'm Mark. So actually, you know what? We have to do some groundwork before we do that. Remember when we used Flexbox to do this row? We have the avatar, and then we have our bio section. Well, we had to make columns for that. And Webflow has something for that as well. So the first thing we need to do, I believe, let's see, can we... Well, that'll add columns directly to the container. We don't want to do that. We need another container for our heading section. If you remember how we structured this, each one has its own section. So div class equals row in our case. We need to make another div block for that. So just put that in there. And then we need to put columns inside of that. Now, one thing that's confusing about Webflow is like I've got two tags now. I've got the div block and I've got the container, but they look like the same thing because they're in the same area. If you look at this little breadcrumb stack down here at the bottom of the page, you can see more easily what the hierarchy is. And I believe they even have a hierarchy view. Let's see, is this it? Yeah, that's it. So you can see the navigator. I can see the whole structure of that. So I've got a body tag and then a container tag and a div tag. And that maps pretty directly to the structure we have on this page, body, container, which was main in our case, and then div. So inside the div tag, now we're going to add an image for my avatar. So let's add an image in there. Wait a minute. Did we miss a step? No, I don't think we did. Let's just do add an image, and then I can upload an image, and we got to drop files in here, or we can just upload directly. So I'm going to select from my website folder, if I can find it here. Hopefully it'll let me do an SVG. Yep. So there's me.svg. And notice this is what happened when we did our SVG image, if you remember way back a few weeks ago when we were doing this. So I need to add styles to this clearly to make it round and everything like that. So if you remember how we did that here, if we inspect, we set width height to 80 pixels, background color white, border radius 50%, and padding 4px. So let's just do that. So width height to 80 pixels. So 80 by 80, and go down to background here and set that to white. Whoops. And then border radius, what was it, 50%? Is that what we did? 50%. So there we go. And I think we added some padding to it too, didn't we? Yeah, 4 pixels of padding. So where's padding? Padding is right here. And actually, padding is a bit weird in Webflow. Like they give you this box model visualization, which is kind of cool, but it's like a little hard to deal with. So I think we can just do 4 pixels and then click it. That's on the left side, and then 4 pixels on the right side. And then 4 pixels. There's probably a faster way to do this. I'm probably not doing it the right way. But I just set 4 pixels of padding all the way around, and there we go. We've got our avatar that looks like this. So next up, let's do the heading. So hi, I'm Mark. And I probably am not going to do this whole page. I'm just going to go through the first part. But they've got a heading typography block right here. So let's drag that in up next to this. And it's not lined up yet, and that's because we haven't set it up as a row yet. Hi, I'm Mark. And then what do we need under that? We need a paragraph. Well, just text, I guess. Yeah, paragraph. So that'll be for our bio. I'm not sure if I got that in the right spot. So I'm going to copy and paste that in. Notice we don't have our font set up yet. We'll work on that in a minute. Now, to get these to display in columns, like I could do the same thing we did over here and just set the flexbox, set it to flexbox. So if I go to display and then flex, it'll do it in a row. But this heading needs to be grouped with this bio and then our button eventually. So we actually need to put these in a different container. So let's see, how do we do that? I think if we just add another div in here, and then we drag the heading into it, and then we drag the paragraph into it. There we go. That's getting a little bit closer. We'll create our button in a minute. Let's set the alignment here. So we've got our display flex now, and the direction is horizontal. We can do a line like that. That's better. And let's see, how do we get that to, let's see. I think this div, grow if possible. Yeah, there we go. So if you hit this grow if possible thing, so sizing grow if possible, that's under the hood, that's just saying flex grow. That'll expand that space to fill whatever space is available. And then we had some margin, I think, on the left side. So we can do that here. Let's do 10 pixels of margin. Yeah, there we go. All right, so now let's do something fancier. Let's add our button. Like, how do we do buttons in Webflow? You know what? I don't know. Let's find out. We got a link. We could start with that. Turn it into a button. There's a form button. That's not quite what we want, though, I don't think, in this case, because it's a contact link. We're not submitting a form. So that's kind of a different thing. And they've got these things called components. I don't think we need that, though. Let's go ahead and just... Wait, here's a button. How did I miss that? Was that a button? And it doesn't really look like our current button, but let's go ahead and like style it up a bit. So let me grab the style from this guy. And I think we had that under link color. What is link color though? Yeah, it's this hex right here. So let's set that to the background color of the button. There we go. And the foreground color of the button up here. Let's just make it black, I guess. And then we need the border radius. What was the border radius? 18 pixels. So 18. Whoops. Why did that not work? Oh, I didn't have it selected. Okay. 18. There we go. All right. So, and then we had a hover state on there, which you can't really test hover states, I don't like in this mode, but we can hit this little preview button, this little eye, anytime. And it does not have a hover state. So how do we add a hover state? Let's see here. Okay, I found it. So it's actually just right under here under this selector. So when it says selector here, this is the same thing as a CSS selector. It's just in the interface. So they've got a button selector, and then there's a hover state right here. So if I do hover, so now I'm styling the hover state. So let's see, what was the background color was swapping out to be, whoops, I gotta do a plugin for that apparently. We don't need to do that. The background was swapping out with, or the, let's just make the background, let's just make it transparent on hover. And then the color, the foreground color, like the text color, should be this. Wait a minute, what? Oh, that was the background. All right, text color. Here we go. Okay, and then we had a border around it, didn't we? So borders are right here. Do 1 pixel, and the color was the same as the text color. There we go. And now let's try to test it out, see if we got the hover state. Yep, there we go. So notice how that's moving right there. It's because we have a border on hover. We ran into the same problem with the code. Because we have a border on hover, but not on not hover, then it changes the size of the button. So we need to actually fix that. Under the plain button state, we also need a border. 1 pixel. And let's set the color to that same foreground color. All right, now if we preview, yeah, there we go. So obviously we need to edit this button to say contact me. So let's go ahead and double click it. Contact me. Oops. There we go. So yeah, pretty good button. And obviously we need to get our font in there. So let's select the body tag. That'll set the font for everything on the page. And let's see, what do they have in here? Do they have the font I want? What was I using actually? Let's look at that. It was a Google font. Where is our font? Source Code Pro. Do they have that? Can I search in here? It does not look like they have Source Code Pro. They do have all these, and I can like kind of preview them on hover, which that's pretty cool. Maybe for now, we'll just pick a different one. There is a way to embed Google Fonts, but for now, I'm just going to go the easy route and pick a different typeface. What do we want to use? How about that one? Montserrat. All right. So cool. So we've built like kind of the top part of the page. Obviously, I'm not including the navigation here, but I think you get the idea. Most of the concepts in Webflow will map directly to what we did in code. But that said, there are like Webflow specific ways of doing it as well. Like for instance, I made kind of my own flexbox row here with that div, but they actually have a pre-prepared columns thing that kind of does the same thing. They also have a grid if you're doing like a gallery. Like I think if we do a grid, we can configure that the same way we did our gallery. That should be inside the container, shouldn't it? Yeah. Let's make sure it's inside the container. Nope. There we go. So now there's our grid, and you can just drop images directly in there, I think. Can we do that? Where's image? Okay, image. And I think didn't we set our width to like 400 by 400 or something? And then choose an image. And I got that same. I think we can just drag our images in directly from our old website. Well, actually, let's just do one at a time. Can we do that? Oh. We can just drag them directly into the grid. Oh, that's interesting. So how do I replace this guy? Yeah, choose image. Okay. Yeah, so the way the media stuff works, they've got this little media manager. Replace image. Actually, let's just drag all the rest of them in here. Okay, so now you should be able to just copy, paste. And then when we hit replace, we just select a different image that we uploaded. Place image. There we go. So you get the idea. And you could keep playing around with this. It's also going to give you these kind of tooltips that are helpful. I would actually read these. Some of these are giving you some good tips about things. So anyway, once Webflow has really good tutorials and documentation. On their main site, they've got a link to Webflow University. They've got a really good onboarding thing. So spend some time just playing around in there. Try to replicate your web page as much as you can. You don't have to do every page, but try to at least do your home page. And then when you're done with that, you can publish it. So let me just close these tips here. All right, so if I hit this publish little rocket guy, hit publish, you check that, make sure you have that domain thing, and then publish to selected domains. Once it's done publishing, it gives you a link right here. And now anyone on the internet could view that link. So this is actually a full published website. And then anytime you update it, so say like, look at this grid here, that needs some margin on top of it. Let's add it. I think I can just drag. Yeah. Whoops. If you hold shift, it adds it on all sides. Okay, that's good to know. 20 pixels. So let's say I add that margin. I got to republish it now. Publish. So this is kind of like the upload to Netlify step we were doing. It just does it in the interface. So now it's published. So anyway, that was just a very basic overview. Obviously, I didn't duplicate everything. I think you get the idea, though. Try and see how far you can get duplicating your website in Webflow, and actually just go beyond that. Make some changes to it as well. And I look forward to seeing what you make with it.